Hey friend, Chris here from LogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Today, I want to talk about the perennial troublemaker for many a Logic user, and that's Smart Tempo. Smart Tempo is this amazing system in Logic Pro that basically keeps track of the recorded tempo of all your recordings, and it makes sure that everybody plays back at the correct tempo, the project tempo. And Smart Tempo really is amazing. Now, I've done plenty of videos about Smart Tempo, usually focused on extracting a beat map from a recording. So maybe you play drums or acoustic guitar at just a natural pace without a metronome. You're just playing along, what feels good to you. And you know that your pacing was not exactly on 100 and whatever BPM. So you want to pull that beat map out of the recording, place it across the tempo track in your project, and then start laying in session players, Apple loops, other recordings to that tempo map. Now, this can be accomplished, but I receive emails pretty frequently from users who are like, Chris, I've watched your videos. I cannot figure it out. It's just me playing acoustic guitar. I don't know why it doesn't work for me. So I want to show you an example today of an acoustic guitar and how easily this can be accomplished with Smart Tempo. But I'll also show you a variation of the same recording where there's some mishaps along the way and how I get around that using Smart Tempo's hint system. So let's dig into it. All right, on screen, I have a project of an acoustic guitar recording alongside a vocal recording. And in fact, if you watched last week's video all about using stem splitter to remove bleed from audio recordings, this is the same artist and song. Now, before we go any further, it's worth pointing out everything I'm going to show you in today's video has to do with Logic Pro versions 10.7.5 and above. Smart Tempo was introduced with Logic Pro version 10.4, but some major updates occurred for Smart Tempo with version 10.7.5. Mainly that the Smart Tempo system was upgraded with machine learning. Also, the introduction of the hint system to Smart Tempo, which makes it a lot easier for you to help Logic Pro along when figuring out the tempo of a recording. All right, with that out of the way, the first section of this project, starting from about bar 2, is a recording of the artist playing acoustic guitars and vocals simultaneously, but recorded without a metronome. So just the natural pacing, whatever felt good to the artist at that time. The second portion, starting at about bar 47, is a recording of the acoustic guitar, vocals, and drums, but to the metronome at 114 beats per minute. We're going to focus our attention on the first recording here. Let's take a quick listen to just a couple bars of the recording, and then we'll dig into Smart Tempo. Here we go.
Say like a hologram, you could appear for a minor fee, but your people handle that.
All right, so there's our recording. There's our acoustic guitar, the vocals. First things first, anytime we're talking about Smart Tempo or Flex Time, these systems that rely on transient information, you want to pick the track that, number one, is most rhythmically reliable and relevant throughout the recording. In this case, we just have a vocal and an acoustic guitar. The acoustic guitar is the instrument that's playing the entire time. It provides the most relevant rhythmic action for our recording. Number two, you want your rhythm track to have a lot of obvious transients. So if I zoom in on the acoustic guitar, you can see exactly where every chord hits. It's very obvious. This is important to point out because Flex, Smart Tempo, they rely on transients that are easy to identify to figure out where transients exist. So with the acoustic guitar in mind, I'm going to walk you through step by step how I'm going to use Smart Tempo right now to immediately and easily extract a beat map. Step one, just select the region that you want to analyze using Smart Tempo. So I've selected the acoustic guitar here. Step two, open the editor. So you can double click on the region, or go up to the editor button in the control bar, or press E on your Mac's keyboard. Step 3, click on the Smart Tempo tab in the editor. All right, Logic has already gone ahead and analyzed the tempo of the acoustic guitar recording, but you might see something more like this. Basically, all the Smart Tempo editor is telling you is that you need to analyze the audio recording for tempo information. So step 4, just click on Analyze. All right, so there's a lot of information here, and I'll even expand the editor so we can see a bit more. Bring this into view. Logic has gone ahead and analyzed the tempo throughout the acoustic guitar recording. You can see that the tempo is set to a variable tempo. Logic has identified the time signature to be in 4/4, so 4 beats per bar. Also worth pointing out, if you want to get started with Smart Tempo, it's good to get to know the concepts of time signatures and beats. That's really going to be helpful here. But you can always change the time signature at any time just by clicking on here and choosing from a different value. You can also see the tempo is set to 122.3 beats per minute, but this is based on the playhead position currently inside the editor. If I grab the playhead position and move it, you can see the tempo is changing literally beat by beat. So you can see Logic has identified a varying tempo. At this point, I need to know, did Logic do a good job of identifying the tempo? Because I don't know. I don't know just based on looking at it, right? So let me place the playhead at the beginning of the recording. And next, we're going to go right up here to the right-hand side where we can see a metronome button and a playback button. And there's a slider here to blend between the two. When you click on the metronome button, it turns blue. That means the metronome will play back when we preview the tempo inside the Smart Tempo editor. And when I click on the preview button here, the speaker icon, I'll click on it and then we'll hear the playback of just the recording, the acoustic guitar alongside the metronome. Let's give it a try. All right, so it sounds pretty good. It feels kind of curious at first. If we go to the very beginning, you'd see the very beginning of the chord doesn't land exactly on bar 2. That's not where Logic placed bar 2, the very first beat of the bar, in the context of this recording, and that seems kind of weird. But when you listen to the metronome alongside the recording, it actually sounds really well paced. And that's because the artist didn't actually start his performance on the bar. He's kind of playing off the bar. So if I turn your attention to this recording that was recorded to a constant 114 beats per minute, we'll listen with the metronome on, take note of the acoustic guitar and drum performance in relation to each major bar. So 48, 49, 50, and 51. Here we go. Right? Our performers don't land right on the bar. They're actually on the 8th note right before the bar. So the bar actually occurs during the sustain of the chord, right at 48. At 49, the chord actually ends. 50, again, the chord is decaying or there's a bit of a strumming pattern going on. 51, the chord ends again. So Logic actually picked up on this offbeat thing that's going on. If we preview again, I'll hold Option and press spacebar to begin preview in the Smart Tempo editor. So that sounds great to me. I have a lot of confidence in Smart Tempo, but if you're not so confident, you can always preview the varying tempo map in the display here just by going to the View menu in the editor and showing the tempo curve overlay. And now we can see the beat per beat, moment by moment, tempo variations across the recording. And it looks great. The tail end here looks a little iffy, but that's just because it's the final chord of the recording. That doesn't concern me at all. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to reduce the view of the editor here. I'm going to go to the Edit menu in the Smart Tempo editor. And in this menu, I'm going to apply this region's tempo, the acoustic guitar tempo map, to the project tempo. A menu pops up that asks, do we want to align the downbeat to the nearest project downbeat and maintain relative positions of all the other regions? 9 times out of 10, I make sure to enable both these options. Yes, I want the first downbeat to line up with a downbeat in the project here. And I want to maintain relative positions of regions because otherwise the vocals may fall out of time with the acoustic guitar recording, and that would be a problem. So let me apply. All right, so now let's take a listen in the tracks area with the metronome of the acoustic guitar and the vocals. mean, that sounds pretty good to me. Let's go to the later section here.
Look is coming round, yeah, yeah. These are somber days, yeah, yeah. These are somber days, yeah, yeah. These are somber days.
Sounds pretty dang good to me. Now, one thing I want to point out is if we undo, so I'm pressing Command and Z to undo and then Shift Command and Z to redo, everything looks pretty good, but you just have to be careful if you have Flex turned on with any audio tracks in your projects. So if I show Flex, I do have some flexing occurring, even in the original audio here. Right, we have these blue tempo markers. This is another part of the Smart Tempo system to make sure your audio recordings stay in time with the project tempo. And you can see here there's no tempo markers, but some flexing has occurred. Now, if you want your audio recordings to stay in time with any changes you make to the project tempo, this is perfect. But if you don't want this to happen, if you don't want Flex working in the background against you, then I recommend that you turn Flex off for your audio recordings, or at least for the region. So if I leave Flex on for the track here, I can select this region and just use the region inspector to turn it off for just this one region. Side note, if you ever have troubles with Flex time, which I know many Logic Pro users do, I just want to point out, earlier this year, I crafted an entire course all about Flex time and Flex pitch in Logic Pro, and I even touch on Smart Tempo's relationship with Flex in the course. This course is not just a typical primer of how to get started with Flex time and Flex pitch. This is hands down, I can guarantee you, the most comprehensive course on Flex around. The course is called Flex and Forget, and I'll include a link down below so you can learn more about it. I just want to point that out if you've ever struggled with Flex time and Flex pitch in your projects. All right, you've seen me walk through the steps with Smart Tempo. I made it look exceedingly easy, and I'm sure that you're kind of yelling at your screen a little bit, just kind of like, no, Chris, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. So I want to show you a slight variation of the same recording where Smart Tempo didn't quite get it right immediately. So I'm going to mute this acoustic guitar, and I'll unmute the original acoustic guitar before I use Stem Splitter. As it turns out, there's a little bit of bleed from the vocals. If we take a quick listen.
Yeah, you're here for what I have to say, like a hologram. You could appear for.
It's actually quite significant. Let's hear how Smart Tempo does in this situation. So I'm going to open the editor. I'm going to go to the Smart Tempo tab, and I'm going to analyze. All right, so if we expand the editor here, let's take a look. Right here is the first chord. And as I explained to you just a moment ago, in the previous example, Logic easily identified that the bar really should be in the middle of the chord and not right on the chord. But in this case, Logic's having a little trouble, and I think it's because of that vocal bleed that's in the recording. It's throwing the pacing here. If we take a listen alongside the metronome, it almost sounds right. But if I try to throw in Drummer or any other session player or an Apple loop, you would hear in a hurry that things are not quite what they seem. In fact, let's just give it a try. Go to Edit, apply region tempo to the project tempo. I'll bring in a session player. I'll line it up with the bar here. And let me make sure to have Drummer follow this acoustic guitar. All right, let's take a listen. Yeah, it's not quite right. Let's fix it. So I'll open the Smart Tempo editor once again. And what I'm going to recommend to you is to get familiar with the hint system in Smart Tempo. It's the button right here. And when this button's orange, you have the option to either drop a hint regarding where the downbeats are or where a beat is, just by hovering your mouse in the top third or bottom third of the editor. The downbeat is the first beat of a bar, where a beat is the three other beats, in this case of a 4/4 time signature. So I know the downbeat doesn't land right here at the beginning of the chord. The downbeat occurs here in the middle of the performance. With my cursor in the upper third, I'll click to add a downbeat hint. I also want to add three other beat hints here. Just have to make sure I'm in the bottom third, and I can click. Right, so now I have the downbeat and the 3 other beats. Now, if you're not too sure what's going on here, just go to the View menu here in the editor to enable the option to show transients. Right, so now we have a much clearer sense of where transients are occurring, so it'll make it a lot easier to figure out where you want to drop these hints. At this point, I can tell Logic to apply these changes. So Logic's going to take these hints into consideration and make updates to the tempo map across the entire recording. Let me give it a try. All right, not too bad. But we can see some goofiness here and here. I'm going to take a listen and drop further hints along the way. Okay, something right here seems to be off. So I'm confident in this being a downbeat. This is a beat. We have another beat. But you can see things are speeding up between these 3 beats here, right? It's getting shorter, the distance between the 2, shorter again, shorter again. And the downbeat really should be right here. So I'm going to drop that hint and apply changes. All right, so now we're getting something a little better, as you can see in the preview. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, you're here for what I have to say.
Right, so I just go further down the line, just kind of smoothing things out as I feel necessary. If you ever need a better preview, not just in the Smart Tempo editor, you can always go to Edit and apply the region tempo to the project tempo. Make sure to enable these options for downbeat and relative positions. But already that's looking pretty dang good. If we take a listen now, I want to make sure that drummer is lining up with my performer here. And we'll even drop in a session player region, shorten it up for that very first upstroke, make an adjustment. Take a listen. I mean, that sounds pretty dang good, doesn't it? Smart Tempo has your back, and even if it messes up because of some other aspects of the recording that maybe are messing up what it believes are the downbeats and the beats and the time signature of a recording, you can use the hint system to drop in hints to smooth out any problems with the tempo analysis. I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, as always, please subscribe to Why Logic Pro Rules here on the channel and on the website. And please be sure to check out the description below, where I always include links to PDFs, guides, and templates to help you in your journey with Logic Pro. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you later. Take care.